In this video, we're going to look at election campaigns in Canada. Elections in Canada are characteristically short, compared to our American neighbors who seem to have 2-year-long election campaigns. By comparison, a Canadian election campaign might run 30 to 40 days. There's a few key events within that time span. There's the Leaders Tour, there's the Leaders Debate, and then there's local campaign strategy. We'll look at each of those components. For one, the National Leaders Tour involves the party leaders going across the country to try and get votes for their candidates in all of the ridings. They will also visit strategic ridings that represent an election where they might be able to win a seat that was previously held by someone of the opposition parties. One of the things that these politicians will do is pose for photo opportunities to try and make them appeal to voters in the region and look like just ordinary Canadians. Sometimes with mixed effectiveness. You can see Prime Minister Harper, former Prime Minister Harper on an ATV, and then again flipping pancakes at the Calgary Stampede. Sometimes the photo ops are pretty contrived. The Prime Minister, when he was campaigning, often kept, just by coincidence, a hockey net and some sticks in the plane. And so while they were on the tarmac waiting for everybody to board, somebody on his campaign staff would just happen to break out the hockey net, and they were able to kill time on the runway playing hockey. A blatant appeal to sort of sentimentality and hockey in sort of a nationalistic sense. But it was one thing that politicians do from time to time. Robert Stanfield, during a political campaign for Prime Minister, did the same thing, except he was playing with a Canadian football, one of those big fat J5V Spalding ones. And he looked great. He was out on the runway. He's a big athletic guy throwing the football around. And then just one of those reps, he dropped the football. And this picture was snapped, and it made it onto the front page of the newspapers at the time with the headline that Stanfield fumbles away the election. And he did. He ended up losing. So you got to be careful as a leader when you're engaged in these photo ops, because sometimes they can backfire. Justin Trudeau was very good at orchestrating photo ops. While he was on the National Leaders Tour, he would just happen to take a break and go to the gym for a boxing workout and then invite the press to come with him. Again, it was sort of a direct appeal to contrast, at the time running against politicians, Stephen Harper and Thomas Mulcair, that were a lot older than him. So it was a good chance for him to portray himself as sort of youthful and energetic in comparison to them. Justin Trudeau also took advantage of just sort of the enthusiasm of voters wanting to take selfies with him, and so he would indulge them and always seem to engage the crowd. So again, just a different spin on the strategy of trying to generate excitement through the Leaders Tour and posing for photos, sometimes with voters, sometimes without. Another milestone in the campaign is the Leaders Debate. There is typically one debate in English, and then either one night or a few nights later, a debate in French. And they're carried by Canada's networks, and it's a pretty active affair because we have lots of participants. It's not like a one-on-one American-style debate. We have upwards of 5 or 6 candidates on stage during a Leaders Debate. So they can be sort of raucous affairs as each one tries to score points to their political advantage. Now, as important as they are in an election campaign, they're still not that important. There have been occasions where leaders' debates have been rescheduled. There was one election where the French language leaders' debate got postponed because it happened to be on the same night as a hockey game. The Montreal Canadiens were playing a playoff game, so we moved our national election debate because of a hockey game. So priorities, I suppose. The last part of the election campaign that I'm going to look at is canvassing. Canvassing is when parties recruit volunteers. These are the ground, these are the volunteers, these are the base, that will go around knocking on doors trying to convince people to vote for the candidate in that riding. There's a lot of potential in this strategy because people like to be engaged by political candidates like this. It can be very effective, but it's costly. It takes a lot of time and energy. This is especially important in the final stages of the campaign in what's called GOTV, get out the vote. After you've canvassed for the entire campaign period, you want to make sure those folks that you've contacted have gotten to the polls. And so in the final stages of the campaign, you'll call voters, you'll verify whether they voted or not. If not, The campaigns will ask, do you need a ride to the polls? I can come and get you and drive you to go vote if you want. All of this, very labor intensive, a lot of knocking on doors, a lot of calling to make sure that you can get every single vote out of your riding. So just to recap, really short election campaigns in Canada. Few important things. There's the National Leaders Tour to try and get photo ops and drum up excitement, the Leaders Debate, and then of course the all-important ground campaign at the local level with canvassing and the Get Out the Vote efforts.